So hello everyone, my name is Kyle Whittington. I'm founder and managing director of Bad Dinosaur. So we are a software design and development agency based up in sunny Edinburgh. I myself am a software developer by trade. I've contributed to over 60 different client projects being delivered since starting Bad Dinosaur back in 2013. So with that out of the way, just a quick background story. So for me, I studied software development in South Africa, which is what explains the familiar yet different accent. It's been tempered down by a decade in Scotland. And the other burning question you probably have is, why did you start a company called Bad Dinosaur? So for people who don't know, dinosaurs are mostly wiped out due to their inability to adapt to the changing climate after that pesky asteroid hit. Mammals did adapt, and that's why we're here today. So we're keen on helping businesses not be as bad as those dinosaurs and adapt to the actual changing landscape, to innovate in their industry and then do something a little bit different. In a nutshell, Bad Dinosaur builds and launches amazing digital products. So whether you're an entrepreneur, startup, or existing business, we just partner up with you to build and launch your very own digital product. So that first idea in your head to your first kind of paying customers and then beyond, we've got you covered. So what makes us different, really, besides the strange name, is that we work almost entirely with early stage ideas from people very similar to yourself. So be it from small and medium-sized businesses or entrepreneurs yet to embark on that exciting and terrifying journey of starting a business. And that differentiation is important because you'll find a fair amount of agencies out there work with far larger organizations, household names, and their approach to software development, particularly at that early stage, will be very different to ours. So where larger agencies will work with just a handful of clients each year, spending hundreds of thousands with them, we'll work with 20 or 30 early stage ideas every year, with our typical clients spending around 30 to 40,000 pounds in their first year getting their app to market. So where this rigidity and structure works great for those larger agencies, we are incredibly agile, and it's something that we really promote. We're very nimble at adapting to changes that products will inevitably have to make. And so we've honed our skills in leveraging that knowledge that we've gained on working over those 60 projects during the past 3 years. And that's why people then partner up with us, because they can then leverage that knowledge to and hopefully reduce their costs in getting to market. First, what we're going to chat about. So because we're partnering up with people just like yourselves each day, we've learned exactly how to save our clients time and thus money when developing their products. That's what I'm here to talk about. Firstly, we'll run through the basics of what you'll need to build an app, how you know if it's a good idea or not, chat about using an off-the-shelf solution rather than building something yourself, and then how to maximize your budget when you are actually building the app, as well as some common mistakes that we see people making when they approach us to build and launch something. So first up, what do you need? So a fairly well-formed idea should be just fine. So it's not just an idea you had in the shower this morning, but would rather be something that you've been thinking about for the past few months, jotting down some ideas on how you might tackle it. You've done some research into possible competitors, and you've been starting to map that out in your mind, just how it might all fit together. So for agencies like ours, that's kind of your typical entry point for our clients. So now that you have this relatively well-formed idea, the next biggest challenge is how much is it going to cost? So the best analogy I usually give for people asking that question is, if you were deciding to build a house from scratch and you give an architect a call and ask them how much it will cost to build, they'll probably tell you they won't be able to tell you just over the phone call, and they'll need more information. So you'll find it varies from agency to agency, but for most people or most agencies, they'll ask you to book in some kind of workshop or discovery session, which is usually made up of multiple people, all highly skilled at building products, who would then sit down with you, gain a full understanding of exactly what you're looking to build, asking tough questions too. So for us at Bad Dinosaur, we like to play the kind of devil's advocate with you, really probe and get you to actually defend each reason for a particular feature or business decision. So we find that really helps get down to that core problem of what you're trying to solve. And that's a question you'll actually hear a lot, which is, what problem are you trying to solve? So it applies not only to the overall product, but also to each feature that you're actually looking to build into the app. So having this kind of problem-solving mindset can really help you at the early stages of building the application. So the next step is, how do you actually validate that idea? So there are a variety of ways to validate, all of which depend on how complicated that problem is that you're trying to solve. So for us, we're huge supporters of lean software and following the principles of something we call minimum viable product. So at the heart of that, it's basically the idea of boiling down your idea to its core constituent parts, and then kind of focusing on those rather than getting caught up in the fluff around the edges. You'll then build that core bit of functionality, take it to market to prove there's an appetite for it, take on user feedback, and then iterate on that and launch the next version. You just rinse and repeat that cycle. So this concept of just designing, building, launching, taking feedback, and then repeating is the kind of agile in nature and the premise of minimum viable product. So, and that's often achieved without building any bespoke software at all. So proving an idea can actually be as simple as providing paper prototypes to people. So you can check out something called Prototype on Paper, which is a great app that you can use for just doing kind of initial paper prototypes with people all on a phone. It can be using less scalable or slick solutions to prove that there is in fact a demand for what you're looking to build. And don't be afraid to use smoke and mirrors in your solutions. So for example, something like some mechanical Turk, where actually it's humans behind the scenes doing some more of the manual tasks when your idea is still at that very early stage. It's often the best way to prove if it is a pinch point and there is actually a need for a specific app feature or the app in its entirety. So the other thing that we try and always urge our clients to go and investigate is whether there actually are off-the-shelf solutions versus building bespoke. So bespoke software is often confused as being a single piece of work that doesn't really require too much ongoing effort. It really isn't. You know, building an app is an ongoing process, one that needs constant attention and maintenance, and something that will certainly have ongoing costs associated with it, like hosting, support, maintenance, and all the rest. The key in comparing off the shelf to building yourself is to look at your return on investment. So whilst they're always relatively low upfront costs to off the shelf solutions, they're typically a monthly cost that will continue indefinitely, like licensing fees. So building something yourself will obviously have far higher upfront costs, but then you need to forecast out when that investment will have paid for itself to then reduce your ongoing costs. And also remembering that you'll be providing your business with some more value in the form of the intellectual property that you're actually building. But don't underestimate the sheer effort involved in building something yourself. It will be a significant distraction for your business, and it will be a roller coaster of emotions. Make sure you have enough space for this in your life. We talk about app development as being like a long-term relationship with your partner, not just a holiday romance. So once you have actually gone ahead with trying to build something yourself, how can you actually get the best possible value for money? The biggest time and money saving activity is certainly at that initial product design phase of app development. And so communicating your idea effectively to whoever's going to be building it. And this is where your development partner will need to draw up storyboards of your entire application. Those are basically just like low fidelity drawings of each page, how a user will interact with the page. You don't have to be an artist to create this kind of thing yourself either. There are loads of websites out there you can help that can help you out with it. Even if you just spend a few days marking up different pages and doing some rough drawings of how each user moves through your app, what happens when I click this button, where does it take me, etc. Those drawings can reduce the amount of time and thus money required when trying to communicate your idea to your development partner. Of course, it's not a requirement by any means. You can have the dev partner do it themselves, but you'll just be surprised at how much of that process identifies some really interesting questions that you'll need to answer before you actually ask someone to build it for you. So ensure you have enough time to review work in progress so that you don't actually hold up any of the development efforts. So it's an easy thing to overlook, but something that we either are for ourselves, we're always working with, say, very busy business owners or entrepreneurs who are still working in a full-time job. It means that their time is limited, but when it comes to product development, you'll need to be available at regular intervals to ensure that that product is going in the right direction. Whilst your development partners will always try and understand what you're trying to achieve, there's always room for error, and having enough time to keep in touch with that process on a regular basis is really, really crucial. So next big thing is obviously investigating funding options. So there are a bunch of great organizations in the UK that can actually help with funding. So have a look into Innovate UK is one of them. Loads of our clients have been through them for additional funding. Also look into research and development tax credits. So these can also help you reduce your corporation tax bill for any innovative software that you actually decide to develop. We find quite a few of our clients go through funding routes and grants, and there's a lot of there is a lot of that in the UK, maybe a little bit quieter at the moment, but there certainly are areas that you can go and investigate for that. Best way to maximize your budget is to increase it. So if you have then gone ahead with deciding to build, you'll also have a few different options of how you can build applications. So the three kind of key ones that I've identified are in-house, using a freelancer, or going with something like an agency. So if you're an existing business, you could always look to hire in-house and build everything yourself, which is similar to going with a freelancer. It's definitely a viable route for a lot of people. One of the big pros of doing it in-house is the ability to obviously retain that knowledge and not have it stored externally. If you convert it down, the cost to the business per day is actually far cheaper than an agency. So if you can keep that person busy, you're definitely going to be winning on that end. The cons of that approach are things like speed. Hiring takes time, and if your number of hires then kind of limits the speed at which you can actually develop. You're also then paying that person even when there's nothing to be done on the product. So you're also limited in their skill set as well. So it's not something you can just kind of turn the tap off and on. And of course, I'm biased in that I run an agency, but we honestly have so much in-house knowledge of components that every app ends up needing, that the time it takes us to build that for each new app is largely reduced, and thus, we're passing those savings on to our clients. So for example, payments, user account management, email systems, all of these things have huge common ground across most apps, and you're going to then leverage that with an agency, whereas freelancers or your own in-house may not have built those components before, so you'll be paying for their time double or triple. So if you do go with an agency, what you'll typically find is that they work to something called fixed price or time and materials. I would say are the two most common ones that you'll find. Equity is another option, but I'd say you'll struggle to find agencies that do work for equity, and we ourselves have always kind of tried to steer clear from that, just because of the conflict of interest that you can sometimes have on those types of projects. So at Bad Dinosaur, we are a time and materials agency. So I've worked in a number of agencies and in software development for about 15 years now, and I can say that hands down, I've seen more successful products being launched through a time and materials approach than fixed price. In fact, a lot of the projects that we actually are called in to rescue have previously been these kind of fixed price builds. So what makes fixed price less likely to succeed is it usually comes down to the fact that early stage products changes a lot. Oh, sorry, I've left the wrong the things on there. So yeah, it usually comes down to the fact that early stage products actually change a lot. So when you're going for a fixed price build, you'll find the agency or freelancer will write up a technical spec, they'll write up a big requirements document, and a multitude of other things that they will outline exactly what's going to be built, right down to the letter. If in week 2 you decide that something needs to change from a prototype that you've been playing around with, you'll be forced to then go through a change request form. You'll be told the cost of the change. And this typically doesn't build great products, because the last thing you need when you're iterating on something new is that rigidity. You actually need the ultimate flexibility. So we talk about being 100% flexible on day 1 of a project. You can walk in and then say, we want to change the entire thing. Let's scrap everything we have, and we're open to that. And then we slowly decrease that flexibility until that first kind of major release. So for time and materials, you typically won't be seeing these functional and technical specification documents kicking about as much. It's more about gaining an understanding of the larger project, aligning ourselves with that, and then allocating a bucket of time to solving that problem. It may sound scary at first because you're not giving a defined output, but the key here would be to do some vetting on the agency or the person you're going to be working with to ensure that they've delivered on budget in the past for other clients. We typically recommend to clients to keep around 10% of their budget as contingency to expand out into new features that come along, and then adapt to any changes that they'll inevitably look to make. So once you see work in progress versions of your app, you'll be amazed at how many of your assumptions get crushed. So common mistakes that we see people make from time to time. One of the big ones is build it and they will come. So just because your app is in the App Store or you're available on the web doesn't mean that people will just know about it. When was the last time you just browsed the App Store for something to install? It's a common misconception that building the app is the hard part, when in fact it's the marketing that follows on that should really test your grit. We try and make sure that if clients are spending, say, £30,000 with us in an app development, they should have that kind of budget for the first couple of years of marketing at least, to try and promote their product. So one of the big ones that people also come across is this idea that, the idea is the most valuable part of the product, when in fact it's actually the execution of the idea that really counts. The idea is merely a multiplier of that execution. So the majority of apps that are household names had competitors doing very similar things at the same time as them, but only one or two became the giants they are today. And that's because ideas are rarely revolutionary. It's the execution of those ideas that really counts. So Facebook, Uber, these were hardly revolutionary ideas. Software is also not just for Christmas. It's a long-term thing that you'll be working on and iterating on for years to come. We refer to software in phases for that exact reason. You're not just releasing the first version of what will be many, many versions into the future. Don't expect your budget to end at the first release to the public. You'll need to factor in continual maintenance and support on top of new features and feedback that you'll be getting from your customers. And just, don't get caught up in trying to create the next unicorn. They're outliers for a reason. And for every one of them, there are thousands of businesses that fail trying to do the same thing. Trying to replicate their path doesn't mean that you'll have the same success. And don't be afraid of owning just a slice of a market. There are some really great businesses worth millions of pounds that do very well for themselves. Don't get caught up thinking in billions or even millions. So if you are going to go ahead with it, a few sanity checks that you should ask yourself each time. So if it's a customer-facing product, then ask some of your long-time customers what they think of the idea. Be transparent about your plans and look for an honest opinion, not one from friends and family. If what you're after already exists off the shelf, don't be afraid of these types of solutions, but understand that you'll be unlikely to customize and extend the product yourself. Also be aware of any of those ongoing license costs, weighing them up against the upfront cost of a bespoke solution. Also ask your team if it will benefit their job if it's an internal tool. So they're the ones who'll be most probably working around or on the tech idea the most. They're also the ones who are at the coalface of the challenge. Their insights into the problem you're trying to solve is also paramount. And most importantly is keep it simple. Overcomplicated solutions will stagnate. Interest in them will fall. And it's important to notice that and then scale it back a bit to something that you can actually deliver on. Everyone's worked on these, big, long, stagnant solutions and apps that people want to deliver that just never go anywhere. And importantly, look into minimum viable product concept and helping to shape what that first version of your idea will look like.